I take the cross I shadow for my abiding place. I ask the sunshine, let the sunshine of His face. Content to let the world go by, to know no gain nor loss. My sinful self, my only shame, my glory on the cross. Thank you, man.
All right. Well, I guess I better turn my microphone on then. I guess I'm on there, am I not? Wonderful. Well, I guess I'm getting back on my feet a little. I've been sickly a few days with some bronchitis, or whatever that is. And all right. We always begin our services by sharing with you letters and emails from around the country and around the world. It's hard to believe we're a small group here in Hendersonville, but we're live streaming all over the world right now. People are watching us in Europe and in South America and Ireland and England and Israel, over in Malaysia, Japan, and then we're on TV in about 200 different towns and cities. God has opened these doors up very slowly, just a little at a time over the last 24 years. We've been a ministry going on 25 years. Actually, we started as a Bible class in my house with 4 of us. And one fellow quit after the first week, so that it got it down to me and Mary and Eric, our son. And we've grown. I didn't start a ministry. We just had a Bible group. I have not tried to do anything with this ministry. It's people come along saying, "Hey, can I videotape this?" I said, "Yes, you can. Are you able to? Go ahead." And then one fellow said, "Can I put it on? I think I can put it on TV." I said, "Well, whatever you think, If you want to come in here and work for the ministry, you can. Just do what you're able to do. You're not going to get any complaint from me. The guys are the ones that put it on TV, not me. And the guys are the ones that put it on the internet, not me. I'd just be a little person preaching in a basement over here in my home, especially with the message I preach, if it wasn't for the fellow workers in this ministry. They're preaching as much as I am. Got a email from Joni Irvin in, I guess it's Tomé, New Mexico. "Dear Jim, could you please explain to me how sinful humans can be sinless as babies?" You're talking about a long discussion. I did a 16-message series on why babies don't go to hell. You have to sin to go to hell. Unto him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. A baby would have to know the difference between right and wrong. Do I believe a six-week-old baby knows the difference between right and wrong? No. And people say, yes, but it cries because it wants its way. It cries because it cannot say, "Would someone please change my diaper?" It would say that if it could. Or, "Hey, I'm hungry." It can't do that. The only communication it knows is by squalling. It has to know what right and wrong is. That's the wages of sin is death, not the wages of a sin nature. Paul said in the 7th chapter of Romans, "I was alive outside of the law once." He said without the law, but it means outside the law. That was when he said sin came, and he said the commandment came into my life, sin revived, and I died. So he died spiritually when it came to sin. You have to die, and then you have to be brought to life, born again. God tells us all have sinned. Not the context of all have sinned in Romans, the 3rd chapter, is Jew and Gentile, not babies and adults. Stay with the context. And no one seeks after God. That's true. And in sin did my mother conceive me. That's not what David's talking about in Psalms. He's not talking about I was in sin. Some believe that David perhaps was an illegitimate son that Jesse had by a concubine or something, because he was the shortest, he was ruddy-faced, that means red-faced, and some scholars believe he may have had red hair and freckles. He didn't look like Gregory Peck in that old David and Bathsheba movie talking like this. No, he was a little squirt probably. And they believe he very well could have been conceived. Those guys weren't all living exactly right the way they were supposed to. I mean, Abraham certainly didn't. He lied. So did Isaac, lied. Jacob lied every day of his life. And his name was changed to Israel, and his sons all lied. And Simeon was a killer, and Reuben was unstable as water. I mean, don't think these patriarchs were all so holy. They were godly men to a degree, just like you and I, with sin in their lives like we have. How can you deny that all are born sinners? Goodness, I can take all day long on this if you want me to, but I'm not going to. The Bible teaches us repeatedly that the sin penalty was not passed down to the children, that a son had to suffer for his own sin, and the father had to suffer for his sin. You don't suffer for the penalty is not passed. That's called the doctrine of original sin. The doctrine of original sin is not the doctrine that Adam was the first man that sinned. The doctrine of original sin was something brought in the Catholic Church. Gosh, why did I get on this? It was something brought in the Catholic Church from the pagan world, that the penalty of the father's sins was passed down to the children. And Ezekiel tells us absolutely that's not true, and Deuteronomy says the same thing. It's not true. You're born with a sin nature, but not with sin. And as soon as you come to the knowledge of good and evil, and you know truth from a lie, you'll go straight to the lie. That's what the Bible teaches. How can you deny that all are born sinners? Joni, if you want my series on why babies don't go to hell, I'll be glad to send it to you, but you're going to have to ask for it. The age of accountability is Baptist doctrine, and it is a lie. That's not Baptist doctrine, that's biblical doctrine. You're at an accountable age. Unto him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him is sin. You have to know good. You have to know right from wrong. Whatsoever is not of faith is sin. Faith is death to self. Now, does a baby know how to die to self? No. Sin is the transgression of the law. A baby's going to have to know what the law is. Joni, you want to learn something, I'll teach you something on that, but that's not right. Then DeAnthony Muse from Roanoke, Virginia watches on TV there. Can you please tell me how I can study the Bible? I hope all is well. Goodness. That's takes me all year to explain that. First of all, start getting the DVDs and watching them. Take notes on them. I take notes on my own messages. When I watch on TV, I feel like I'm watching another person. I don't feel like I'm watching me. I monitor all my programs. And I'll say, I don't remember saying that. I don't even remember knowing that. And I write that down. And I learn, or I'll be fitting parts together as I'm watching. I don't feel like I'm watching me on TV because it's interesting to me. I'll follow along going, oh, that's good. I'll write this down. Now, you think that's crazy, but if you're really teaching like you should and people are learning, as a teacher, you're going to learn while you're watching yourself. You can't teach without learning. And then that was from DeAnthony Muse, Roanoke, Virginia. Rebecca writes, she's Shy Rainbow. I don't respect how hateful you are about God. Okay, and how you say homos won't go to heaven. What? I didn't say that. God says that. Go over there in the 6th chapter of 2 Corinthians and read the book. Go over there in Leviticus 21st chapter, Romans the 1st chapter. I didn't say that. I keep saying things that God says, and people say, you said that. I didn't say it. God said it. If they are saved by God, then they will go to heaven. I'm bisexual. Maybe just a bicycle, and I am going to heaven. I'm a Christian, and God loves me for me. If He loves you, He wrote His word in your heart, and you'll be wrestling with sin. I'm not saying. Let me clarify something here. I've had homosexuals call me. I've had lesbians call me. I've had male gay guys. I hate to use the word gay. Homosexuals. And I've had them call me and say, Pastor Brown, I want to love the Lord. I want to live for Him. And I'm a guy, and I like men. What am I going to do? You don't jump down their throat. You get real quiet. Get very soft, gentle to them, but firm. Say, look, this is what I've told a lot of homosexuals. I say, you say you were made that way. I said, let me tell you a secret. We were all made that way. We were all made with a sin nature, and when you come to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you merely pick out the sin that you like best. Just like drug heads do. I've had guys sit at a table downstairs, and before they came to truth, they'll sit there and one say, I liked cocaine, well, I liked heroin, I liked pot, and they would sit there and talk about their drug of choice. And I tell homosexuals and lesbians. I've told a lesbian at the house one night. She said, is this sin? I said, it's sin, but it's not the worst sin. It's another presumptuous sin. Presumptuous sin is like Spurgeon said, when you get right in the light and you sin against the light of God, that's presumptuous sin. You know better than what you're doing. Overcoming homosexuality and lesbianism is the same thing as overcoming adultery. You like to chase women, you like to sleep from bed to bed. It don't matter. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as giving up sugar when you're trying to lose weight. And carbohydrates. You have to force yourself. And you have to put yourself in a place where you know you're supposed to be. And so that's what I will tell them. I'll say, look, there's no easy way out of sin. If you're looking for an easy way, there's not. And it's not any different than planning to rob a bank and shooting some guy at the bank. It's all the same. It's planned sin. And it's something you have to fight to overcome. I believe this. I believe that any man or woman, if God will pull His restraining hand off that man or that woman, that they are capable of getting involved in any sin they've ever seen or ever heard of. And liking it. I believe that. That's the whole thing about the Pharisees. They said, we're better than the rest. No, you're not. You got the same capabilities. He died for our sins. I don't like how you're hating on all those wonderful preachers. Kenneth Copeland is not wonderful. He's one of the biggest liars that has ever walked the face of the earth. Who have helped others' lives. They help themselves with hundreds of millions of dollars every year. I know you think what you think, but you shouldn't have a TV show if you don't know what you're talking about. I'm quite sure you do, since you're 16? Please think before you speak. Gosh, okay. I think that you are very hateful. Well, God's hateful. He loved Jacob and hated Esau before they were born. He hates all workers of iniquity. Me and my grandmother are very disgusted with the way you're talking about these wonderful people. Now, they don't know that when I read something like this is not going to make me mad. It's funny. Wonderful. That's like calling Adolf Hitler a wonderful person. He was a real cute baby when he was little. You have a cult, and I'm against it. I'll be praying for you. Well, if I'm a vessel of wrath, why are you going to pray for me? I have pain every day, and I prayed one day, and He heard me. I think He hears us, but just in time, the devil is trying to speak the words through your mouth. I will pray for you so God will speak through you. I'm 16-year-old female. she's got a lot of experience, doesn't she? Who has to go through hell and back, and God's been there for me. I have a mental illness, so many illnesses and pain, but you know what gets me through? God knowing He loves me and died for my sins, and He will be there for me when I die. You're very deluded if you don't think you have to repent. He forgives and loves me, not without repentance. He wants me to work for my paradise at the afterlife. He is wonderful. He has a plan for everyone. Some of us can't see it, okay? Gosh, we need to have you come down here to straighten us out. We keep playing the game of life, and some of us know that God loves us and is there for us, and some don't. I think you don't. Please read the Bible. Love Rebecca. Love. I thought she was going to say curses Rebecca. Earl Burnett writes to us. He's out in Arizona. Earl's been having a rough time. He's a dear brother. We love him. Hello, Pastor Jim and family. I'm writing to say thanks. Thank you for your support and spiritual comfort through the teaching of God's Word. As I go through this most difficult fire right now, I'm getting all the necessary paperwork done that will biblically end this marriage, and I just want to do what God wants. His wife left for another guy. She was into the truth to a degree. I don't believe she's into it because I don't think she left. I would like to join the Bible study Saturdays, but in time, if God wills. I will be able to get internet and be able to join, but in the meantime, please keep me in your prayers that God continue to give me strength to trust Him through this most difficult time. I believe with all my heart He has removed the hindrance of my life and has beaten me to get under subjection to His Word. I've been a listener and part of the ministry for 4 years now and have not been as dedicated as I should have been because of my sin and doing illegal things with money to please others and my flesh. I've been neglecting God in service. Now He put me in this situation where I have nothing, and I'm grateful for His chastising. I thank God for this truth and His true family He has given me, and I love every one of you. God willing, I can meet you all, but if it will happen in glory one day. Agape and Flail, your dear brother Earl from Arizona. Now you said one secret thing there. You said you were being involved in some things you shouldn't be involved in. Maybe that might have contributed to your divorce. You need to check that out. And if it did, you need to go back and apologize for that. But we love you, brother. Michael Glantz from Alberta, Canada watches us, I guess on the internet there because we're not on TV there. He quotes 1 Corinthians 15:10, but by the grace of God I am what I am. And His grace toward me was not in vain. But I labored more abundantly than they all, yet not I, but the grace of God which was with me. I was reading this and was wondering, can grace ever be in vain? God does nothing in vain, I thought. How can you read this? Well, we'd have to go and do a study on that. Grace is unmerited favor of God. Matthew and Clovis from Bordertown, New Jersey. I don't know if they watch us on TV there or internet. Hello, Tom, Jim. This first question is more about timing and not sure if it can be answered. What does the fullness of the Gentiles mean? I remember Jim explaining the Reformation of Israel as a nation concerning the end times. Well, the fullness of the Gentiles, when Luke 21:24, that the Jews will fall by the edge of the sword and they'll be led away captive in all nations, and the Jews, they'll fall down in Jerusalem, be trodden down to the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That's until the times that the Gentiles cease to rule Jerusalem. And that began to happen when Zionism started in 1896 in Paris under a man named Theodore Herzl. And then, of course, at the end of World War I, then the Balfour Declaration was issued, and that expired May 14, 1948, and then became a nation for the first time in 2,600 years. I believe that's the fullness of the Gentiles. Fullness of the Gentile rule over Israel. And was curious, and has Jesus, God, quit dealing with the Gentiles? Boy, sure is closing their eyes, isn't He? And God's got to remember, we're spiritual Israel. We are circumcised of the heart. Is he only focusing on the Jews? Well, he's focusing on his Jews. A Jew is not outwardly above the heart. Got to keep that in mind. And they say, or is it both? I've wrestled with that all my life. How does the literal Jew fit in with the spiritual Jew? They're going to have to be spiritual Israel and be in the church to be a part, to be the real Jew. So at the end of time, I believe there'll be a remnant from literal Israel come out and join us. That's the only way I can see it. God wouldn't have performed all these miraculous wars in Israel since their War of Independence in 1948 if he wasn't have something special for them there, because they have literally overcome the most overwhelming odds. Second question. I understand a lot of what Jim teaches, but having a difficult time dealing with my flesh. Welcome to our world. How do you all find temperance in God over time? Lots of tribulation and trials, and that works patience. Concerning the sin that rages in the outer man, thanks. Well, just keep listening and you'll hear it. That's something we all wrestle with. That outer man does rage, doesn't he? And some people say they come to truth and they're made perfect in Christ and they don't have any sin anymore. How ridiculous. Barbara Wilson writes from Tulsa. She watches on TV there, and I talked to her last night. She says, Dear Pastor Jim, in all grace and truth, hope this email finds you well. Pastor Jim, when the man of sin and the beast is in full force before the last 3.5 years of time, boy, she's fixing to get into an all-day discussion. Will the church endure persecution such as death, torture, and imprisonment for not renouncing their faith and belief in Jesus Christ? The church is going to suffer because they will not renounce it. That's a long, long discussion. You said in one of your lectures that Satan will attack the church physically and spiritually. I believe that. I understand the physical, but could you explain the spiritual? I know I don't understand Revelation like you do. It says the 144,000 will be the only ones to go to heaven. No, that's not what it says. Well, it says that in a roundabout way. But the 144,000 are those who are redeemed from the earth, being the first fruits. And Paul says, not Paul, but James 1:18, of his own will begat he us, that we might be a kind of first fruits. The church is the first fruits. 12 is the number of the total church. 12 times 12 is 144. There were 12 baskets taken up in John 6 so that none would be lost. 12 apostles, 12 tribes of Israel. 12 is the number of the total church. 7 is the number of the refined church. And I go into that long, detailed studies. Who are they? Do you think that there are some still alive today? Yeah, me and you if you're a believer. What is the importance of them being mentioned in Scripture? That's abstract terminology. I always look forward to your answers. Thanks, and agape to all. Barbara Wilson, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Gosh, I've got more of these. I don't have time to read all these. I'll read some more tonight. I'll read this one. This is a short one. Could you, hi Mary, could you send me a copy of Twin Towers 9/11 tape? Agape Clinton Derricks, Los Angeles, California. He's the actor out there that was on Sanford and Son. He played Aunt Esther's nephew, and he was on that Sliders thing. He's a black fella. He's got an identical twin. His twin don't like what we're saying, and he does. And we love you, Clinton. Just keep watching. We'll send that to you. I'll read these others tonight. I've got so much here. I've got I'll read the special announcement in a minute. I've got a bunch of letters. I don't have time to read all these. I'm sorry I can't read them all. We get tons of letters. One from Helen Hamilton, the Doyles up in Wisconsin, Ernesto Archibald, Farmington, Massachusetts, Thomas from Prescott Valley, Arizona, Martha Bruggerman down in Texas, Cynthia Jackson in Atlanta. They watch on TV in the various cities. Michael Neitz, Charlotte, North Carolina. Brenda Vargas, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Melvin Brown, Black Mountain, North Carolina. He watches out of Asheville area, or he did. Aline Neely, Beaumont, Texas. She watches in Beaumont. Here's one from somebody. I don't know who that's from. This is a letter from the Goers. I don't remember where they're from. And then more letters. I'll read through these tonight. Excuse me. All right. I got a special announcement. Jim Doman is one of our dear brothers. We love him and Barb very much. Jim is a truck driver, and he saw us on TV in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he's walking out the door, he said, to go drive his truck. This is back 7 or 8 years ago. And he stopped, and I was on TV, and he said, this guy's telling the truth. He'd been a Pentecostal. So he called me, and he said I called him back, and we talked for quite a while. And Jim came down here. He's been faithful here every time the door is open, but back a couple of years ago, Jim's come down with terminal cancer, and he's got so much time, we don't know how much. He's our dear brother, and we're trying to help all we can. Barbara needs our encouragement now. She is I told her last night, I said, Barbara, you're the one I worry about. Jim's ready to go. I said, you're the one that's going to become a basket case. She said, I already am. Yeah, because they've been married 50 years, and she's not going to know what to do. And but she wrote me a letter. Jim needs a chair. It's a recliner that has a lift on it. He cannot get up out of the chair. He can't hardly move around. And the recliner is going to cost $700. If you want to be a part of this, we'd appreciate if you could. This is not just some person. This is one of the closest members of this ministry. Barb and Jim have been real close to all of us. And they need our help. So if you want to contribute to a lift, we're going to get it anyway. So if you want to contribute to this lift for Jim, he needs our help. And I want you to really pray about that, because that's something we're going to do anyway. But if you want to be a part of it, I really appreciate that. And I know they will. Remember our other announcements. If you're in the Nashville area, you can watch us on TV. So people recognize the teaching. They see me out in public. They don't know whether to smile or run, or it's like, I hope you don't get me. It's really funny. You ought to be where I am. They'll go, well, there he is. And I'll go, I'm not famous. I'm infamous. When you preach Christmas is pagan and Easter's pagan and God doesn't love everybody, they don't know what to say. And they'll tell me they see me, but they won't come join us. But anyway, you can watch us on TV, and we're also on the internet 24 hours a day, streaming 24 hours a day. They can watch us anywhere in the world, streaming. We got about 300 messages online, and we're putting more on all the time. So, and all kinds of information on our website, graceandtruth.net. And then we got a couple other announcements. Don't forget our needy people. We've got needy people that we try to send money to every month. We send $1,000 to $1,200 a month to the needy, and it's growing little by little. These are people that are part of the ministry, that believe the truth, that make anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. Some of them make $750, and they live on that. And so we're just trying to help some of these needy people. If you want to send to the needy, you can either send a gift card. You can pick that up at any store, or a Visa card or Walmart card or whatever. Or you can send a check to Grace and Truth Ministries, and 100% of what you give, be sure and put on the bottom of the benevolent check, put benevolence or needy. All right. Well, it's we got some visitors here from Platts. I guess y'all are from Ohio. From where? I can't hear. Laurelville. But this is Bobby and Helen and daughter Jerry and son Jonah back there. And we're glad to have y'all here. And make yourself at home. There's water back here and restrooms over here. And glad to have you. Did y'all see us on TV up there? Oh, did you? Okay, I didn't know if it was on TV there or not. We're glad to have y'all here. And evidently you must like the message. Have y'all been watching a while? Oh, have you? Well, we're glad to have you here. Really glad. And it's good to see Dan Seal, not Dan Seals. He's dead. Dan Seal over here, and his girlfriend Lexanne and his mom Pauline, and they seem to love this truth, right? Dan was a Baptist deacon. Huh? I can't hear.
Discipleship training director.
Oh, that's bigger than a Baptist deacon.
He runs a pizza party.
Run what?
Runs the pizza party.
Runs the pizza parties. I thought you said the beach parties.
No, the pizza party. You know, pizza party, ice cream social.
Yeah.
That's discipleship.
Yeah. But Dan loves this truth. I know that. We've talked to him at length, and I know he loves this message. And I'm so glad that you're here. And good to see Rich. Hadn't seen Rich in a while. And glad to have you here, Rich. Any other people we hadn't? New ones? Hey, John, how you doing? Doing okay? All right. Well, I think that's all. Mary's blood pressure's up this morning, so that's why she's not here. Well, let's go with the Lord in prayer. And you know who Dan Seals is, don't you? He's dead, but he was a country singer. He used to be a rock singer. He was England Dan and John Ford Coley. Did that song, I'm not talking about moving in. Don't want to change your mind. But that's not him. This is a guy that believes the truth. That Dan Seals was a wacky guy. He was a Baha'i faith. He liked to hold hands with the world. Aren't people funny? All right, let me move some stuff here. I'm ready, Mike, I think. I'm coming out of 4 or 5 days of bronchitis, so if I'm kind of foggy today, y'all will have to accept that. Ain't no way out of it. We're going to read all these books before I leave today. All of them. I just wanted to show you some things, that's all. Sometimes I think, I know this is true, that visual aid helps more than anything when you're teaching. When I passed out that orbit of the Earth orbiting the Sun, if any of you doesn't have them, we've got some up here. That's the reason for Christmas, is the Earth orbit around the Sun. And that's the truth. If I shake or get to talking fast, y'all, be patient with me. I'm on prednisone. Don't mean I'm nervous. Don't mean I'm crazy. Even though it makes you a little crazy. I always like to explain that because people don't know why I'm talking fast. It's Sunday morning, and we are in a study on various subjects on Sunday morning. I was teaching on perfection, and which is what predestination is about. We're predestined to be like Jesus. Then I took a break to go into some things on Christmas, and that's leading me to other things. I have been thinking all week long. I've been down with some bronchitis, and that makes me think. I can lay in bed and think about what's going on in the world. That's when I do a lot of thinking. And I'm still talking about Christmas, but I'm talking about many other things that have to do with the disinterest of understanding what the truth about Christmas is. It's not just Christmas that people are disinterested in. In order to believe God and believe the truth about the society we live in, you have to have an interest. And I'd like to read to you a little bit about the word interest out of Webster's dictionary. Interest means to involve the interest or concern of, have an effect upon. And when you have an effect upon someone, it is important. Important. Now, important, we get the word important. Important comes from the word import. Now, we import and export items around the world from America. Now, import means to bring something in to our nation, and what is important to you, it concerns you because it brings something important into your life. Now, the reason America doesn't want to believe that Christmas is paganism, it's not important to them. They do not believe that doing the Christmas culture and customs will import anything bad into their life. You have to come to a place where you realize something is necessary in your life to apply it to your life. That goes for anything. If you're making $20,000-$25,000 a year and you've got an education that will get you further in life if you can get the right opportunities, and someone offers you a job making $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and they say you meet the qualifications and I'd like for you to come to my office next Monday morning, it's important to you because you're not making enough to really live by on $25,000 a year. It's very hard to live on that. And it's important because you know if you get that job, you're going to be able to buy a new house, you're going to be able to buy a new car, you can pay your bills at the end of the month. It has to register on you that something is important, and America doesn't feel that things are important anymore. The only thing that's important to them is I got my job, I got my house, I got my car, I got my wife and kids, I'm paying my bills, leave me alone. That's the truth. That's all they care about. I've written something down here. The church is in a state of apathy. They don't care. The word apathy is a Greek word. Apathy comes from pathos, which is a Greek word meaning to suffer or to feel, to be sensitive to something. And when you place the alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, in front of a word as a negative particle, it negates the word, gives an opposite meaning. It means to be insensitive, not to have any feeling about anything, and America doesn't have any feeling about the truth. I'm absolutely sure of that. Any truth. They don't want to hear the truth. I was in the bank the other day. Whenever I talk to someone, I try to identify with what they're feeling. And I witness everywhere I go. I give away DVDs. And this young Mexican girl that waits on me all the time at the bank, cute as a button. I mean, just pretty as a picture. And in her mid-late 20s and just wide-eyed, and she's from Mexico. And I thought, well, I need to hit her with the right thing. I've witnessed to her before and talked to her, and she seems to be open. Well, I started talking to her. She said, did you have a good Christmas? I said, well, I love Jesus. This is what I said to her. I said, I love Jesus with all my heart and soul, but I don't celebrate Christmas. And that just baffled her when I said, I didn't precede it with it, I don't like Christmas. I preceded it all with, I love Jesus with all my heart and soul, but I don't celebrate Christmas. And she puzzled her, and she said, well, why? And then I immediately proceeded to tell her that it was paganism. knowing she was from Mexico, I didn't say it's Roman Catholic. I just said it's paganism. It comes out of a pagan world. And I went into some of the explanations of it. And the bank president heard me talking to her over there. And they all know me because we do all our business there. And he was about halfway afraid me taking her away from her work, and I'm not going to do that. So he thought perhaps he needed to come over and kind of stand behind her. And as soon as he got behind her, he don't want to offend me, Mr. Brown. Would you please go on your way? He didn't want to do that because I do too much business with him, all the church business. So he kind of stood there, and I said, I think he wants to talk to you. He said, oh, no, I'll do something over here. It's like, because he knows I'm very bold about talking to people. But I got to talking to her, and I said, do you not know that America doesn't know the truth about anything? And I knew where I was going to go with it. And I said, America's not into truth. I said, Christmas is paganism. It doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. And I went to that. I said, America doesn't want the truth. She said, like about what? I said, well, they have oppressed the black man. I said, and Thomas Jefferson was not a Christian. He was a deist. He said he was a deist. He said he wasn't a Christian. You can get that out of these books and I brought some of my visual aids here. You can get books by Richard Schenkman. Richard Schenkman was a historian. He still is a historian. He's a few years younger than me. You catch him on C-SPAN once in a while. You can get him on. He used to be on Larry King's all the time. But that's a picture of him right there. He's got these books. You can pick them up at Books A Million. You can get them at Barnes & Noble or any bookstore. You can order them if they don't have them. And he was a researcher for the Library of Congress. And I'm trying to explain to this girl, America doesn't want the truth about anything. They don't want the preachers. They don't want this truth about Christmas. They don't want the truth about history. I've told the story before many times. I went into Texas A&M in the fall of 1957. Went into the history class. The professor, the first thing he said out of his mouth, I will never forget, don't remember much else he said, but he said, they will not let me tell you the truth about American history in 1957. I'll give you answers, you give them back to me on the test. And I about fell out of my chair. Didn't start studying it till years later. Well, Mr. Schenkman researched for the Library of Congress. This was on the bestsellers list, Legends, Lies, and Cherished Myths about American history. He'll tell you all about. It's like Mike's told me many times. Mike has said, whoever wins the war gets to write the history. And we won, and we wrote the history, and it wasn't like we have been told. Did you know that 1/3 of the Revolutionary Army, that they deserted? 1/3 of them? And we wasn't supposed to win, and Washington was a poor strategist. He wasn't good at what he did. He was a chronic liar. We had a special on TV the other night. See, the world don't want to hear this. But we've gotten so callous, you can put it on History Channel, you can put it on A&E, and now it's such common knowledge, people say, oh, so Washington lied all the time. Okay. He did cut down the cherry tree. Okay. You know, it's like we're just calloused. We're apathetic. We don't care anymore about what's true and what isn't. The special was called Washington the other night on TV, and they talked about how he lied all the time. And Mr. Schenkman will tell you how he lied, how that he wanted to. And I'm just simply showing you how that we don't want the truth about anything. How he lied about Valley Forge. See, Washington was always playing games with Congress, and when they were at Valley Forge, Mr. Schenkman said we have in the Library of Congress, we have documentation that all the men had 3 pounds of meat a day to eat. They weren't freezing, but Washington was playing a game back and forth with Congress, trying to get more appropriations for what he wanted to do. So he wrote all these letters to Congress telling them how they were starving and freezing over there. And Mr. Schenkman said it just wasn't true. Isn't that amazing? And then we got to talking about, I talked to this little Mexican girl, and I said, do you not know? And I knew she knew this because she's from Mexico. I said, do you not know that America stole Mexican land in Texas, New Mexico, and California? She said, I know that. Because she studied it in Mexican history. You see, Mexican history don't read like American history when it comes to the Mexican War. She said, I know that they stole it. I said, it was a Tennessee president, James Knox Polk, according to Mr. Schenkman. James Knox Polk, we named Polk Building, Polk Avenue, all of this is named after him. He's from Nashville. And every president wanted to, quote, manifest destiny. That's a real patriotic sounding thing. but it means land grabbing. That's what it means. Nothing but that. And every president wanted to go down in history as with a legacy of annexing land for the United States so we can spread democracy. Don't think because men are in political position and high office that they know what they're doing. They learn politics, get to that. I used to think those guys were experts and authorities on the top of the world. They're not. They just learned to run for office. They were doing it in high school. They were president of the senior class and president of the junior class and head of this team or that team, but that's politics. But Mr. Polk decided he wanted to annex Texas, New Mexico, and California, and I told this girl, I said, he invaded Mexico, which was Texas. She said, I know that. See, I'm going to get on her side immediately to witness to her. I said, we've been lied to about everything. And I said, as soon as we beat the ears off of Mexico, because they would had no chance against the United States, I said, he invaded Mexico, which was Texas, for about 18 months until he finally provoked Mexico to go into war with America. And then as soon as we beat their ears off, I said, we had this phony Hidalgo Treaty. It wasn't really a treaty. A treaty is while two people are at war. We called it a treaty after we just stomped them into the ground. And then we dictated the terms of the treaty and said, we'll take Texas, New Mexico, California, parts of Colorado. She said, I know all about that. Because that's what they teach in the Mexican history books. Whatever nation you're in, when you write the history, it depends on the historians that are writing as to what it actually meant or said or did. So she's looking big-eyed, and I said, watch this tape here. We have been lied to about everything. We have won the war. That's why we've written the history the way it's written. I was thinking last night, I got to thinking, I just need to share some things with people about history and about, I was out in, and you say, what does this have to do with the Bible? It has to do with truth. We've been lied to about everything. I'll tell you what's amazing. We have got access to all the history and all the truth in the world in most of the homes in America. And most people take that access and play games on it. It's called a computer. Anytime I have a question, I go to my computer and start looking it up. I want to know what something is or what it means, and I got to thinking about, I'm just trying to show you we're being lied to about Christmas, about word definitions, about tenses of words in the Greek text, about culture, about customs, about idioms, about metaphors, and everybody's got an opinion that stands in all the pulpits and all the platforms of America. I got a book here called Crazy Horse. Mary and I went out to Rapid City, South Dakota, 6, 7 years ago on a vacation. And we went to Mount Rushmore. And Mount Rushmore's got the presidents, Jefferson and Teddy Roosevelt and Washington, and who else was up there? Lincoln. They got all these guys up there, and about 17 miles south of Mount Rushmore is Crazy Horse Monument. It makes Mount Rushmore look like a flick in a toothpick. And we went to, in fact, Crazy Horse Monument, they started building it in about 1948. It was this family, and they're carving out the entire mountain of Crazy Horse was the big hero. It means his horse is crazy. He was the big hero of the Lakotas, which is the Sioux Indians. They had many different tribes, the Ogallala's, the Hunkpapas. These are all Sioux Indian tribes. They're called Lakotas up there. And they're making this because he is the big superhero of the Lakotas, which is the Sioux. We've been told the Sioux Indians were a bunch of savages. They weren't savages. They were Plains Indians that didn't even ride horses at first. They came out of Minnesota, northern Minnesota, originally up in Michigan, and they came to the plains, and when they got out on the plains, they started riding horses. They were real peaceful people. We considered them savages. The reason we considered them savages, and I'm just telling you, we don't know the truth about anything. This book was written by one of Crazy Horse's descendants. He said Little Bighorn did not happen the way they said it happened in American history books. It's not about that. He said what they had big fairs. He told me, I talked to him. He said they had these big fairs where they'd trade all kinds of trinkets and have archery contests. He said that was what was happening. He said Red Cloud was not gathering all of these Indians to attack the Americans. What happened? Let me read to you here out of this book. This is from an Indian's viewpoint. This is not from an American viewpoint. It's kind of nearly comical but sad. The white man on the plains considered the Indian less than human. He had no rights. You could just shoot him, kill him. They'd call him out in villages where they was going to go in to conquer them and overcome them, and they'd just start shooting them down. They'd call the little children out, the babies, and they'd just kill them all. They were worthless human beings, according to some, probably not every one of the white soldiers, but a lot of them. And this was implanted into their minds. Let me read something to you here. This is why, let me see here. Yeah, here it is. The title of this is Thieves' Road. I saw Thieves' Road when I was out there. There's a reason for calling it Thieves' Road. When we first started, when we came into the Americas, the white man from Europe, most of the American Indians were peaceful people, and they approached us on a peaceful level. And then we started oppressing them. Even Columbus in San Salvador oppressed them, put them under his rule, started beating them. And what do you expect them to do? But start defending themselves. After a while, look, we were here to work for you, but not to be slaves and your servants. So we started pushing them west, and finally it came to a place we wiped out most of the tribes. Many of the tribes that were around back then are not even alive anymore. They're not even heard of. You can read a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and this will tell you the plight of the American Indian. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. I've been out west to Arizona and gone onto the Indian reservations. It's like a third world country, and America doesn't care. You've been lied to. Well, this is what this descendant of Crazy Horse wrote. For years there were rumors of gold in the Black Hills. The Black Hills is outside Rapid City. They were given the Black Hills, the Sioux was given the Black Hills to be their reservation. We said you can have everything west of the Mississippi, and then all of a sudden, except for Oklahoma, wait a minute, Wisconsin, wait a minute, we got them selling in California, and then before it's over with, we say, we'll give you a reservation. So we gave the Sioux, or the Lakotas, they're called Lakotas, Lakotas, we gave them the Black Hills. And when we gave them the Black Hills, we heard that there was gold in them there hills after we gave it to them. It's like taking a man's house away from him and giving him the outhouse in the back of the house. And then you find out you left some gold in the outhouse. And you've already given him title deed to the property, but you found something buried in there by the poop, We got to go in there and take it. I'm just trying to show you that America, you don't know the truth. You think we've been told the truth by politicians? Since when? When's the last time you heard the truth from a politician? I don't believe in politicians. They're there for money and power. Take the money and the power away, they're not going to be there. General Philip Sheridan sent George Custer with an expedition of men into the hills to see if there was gold after we had given them that reservation. Then they come out and start scalping us and attacking us because we're breaking into their home, and we call them savages. We start shooting them back. Gold was detected, and Custer sent his scout, Charlie Reynolds, to Fort Laramie to announce the discovery. Right away, gold-hungry white men stampeded into the Black Hills in direct violation of the Fort Laramie Treaty. The soldiers were ordered to stop all miners from entering the reservation, but none really made any attempts to enforce the order. By the time the Sioux realized what had happened, their sacred Black Hills was swarming with greedy white men. Now the Sioux began to call Custer chief of thieves, and his route to the Black Hills, the Thieves' Road. I crossed Thieves' Road when I was out there, and I asked this fella, I said, why do they call that Thieves Road? He said, it's named after George Custer. They had a Thieves River. I said, I guess Thieves River is named after Custer. He said, yes, he was a thief. He came back and stole what they gave us. And we call them Indian givers. Isn't that amazing? This is an amazing book. But if you get somebody else's view besides the authorities in America, you're going to have a whole different picture. I'm just trying to tell you, we are completely insensitive to the truth, aren't we? I can't stand up here all day long and read to you. Here's a book by Mr. Shinkman. I love Paul Revere, whether he wrote or not. I use these post tabs to mark things, and you can't believe the things they say in here. They'll tell you that Thomas Jefferson was a deist, so was George Washington, and even Ben Franklin was a womanizer. And Ben Franklin didn't do anything but go around talking to people. That's all he did. He was just a statesman. He'd go and try to convince France of something and he'd come back, and he was just a go-between. He was just an errand boy is all he was. He wasn't somebody important. If he lived today, he'd have Franklin Insurance Company or something like that. When you get into the truth about America and about the Bible, we've been lied to about everything. Do you think preachers will lie? Do you think insurance agents will lie? How about lawyers? You think a doctor will operate on you if you don't need an operation? You have to learn to think for yourself. That's why we define words. That's why I encourage you, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed. Rightly dividing the word of you. Let me read you a couple of things out of this book. I love Paul Revere, whether he wrote or not, because he didn't make the full ride. He quit. He'll tell you in here why he's famous. The only reason Paul Revere is famous, the only reason, is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem in the late 1800s. Otherwise, he would have never come into history. The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. I memorized part of it in high school. It's just amazing what we don't know about America. No doubt the founders would be pleased to see that the flag is respected today, but they would not understand it being worshipped. Worship of the flag is strictly a modern development. 100 years ago or so ago, only a few self-appointed flag defenders conceived of it as a sacred object. Schools were not required to fire flags until 1890. Americans did not begin pledging allegiance to the flag until 1892. That's the year my grandfather was born, my mother's father. They did not begin saluting the flag until around the Spanish-American War in 1898. Flag Day was not nationally observed till 1916. That's the year my mother was born. We didn't have a national anthem till 1932. That's 7 years before I was born. The interesting thing is not that the rituals of the flag worship go back only as far as the late 19th century, but that Americans think they go back further. We have become so used to the idea that the flag is a sacred object that we cannot imagine a time when it was not considered one. During the Revolution, when men were fighting and dying on the battlefield to establish a new nation, saluting the flag would not have been regarded as an empty gesture. The thing to do is go out and join the fighting. When the invasion of the hordes of immigrants from Europe, hordes with strange names and exotic accents, it was believed that the flag rituals were needed to ensure the newcomers' loyalty. That's why they implemented flag rituals, to help these Italians and Irishmen coming from overseas to project their loyalty to this nation. Oh, goodness. Americans were taught to salute by extending their right hand, palm up, slightly raised. I remember that. I was a little kid in the mid-40s, and we saluted the flag like this. I pledge allegiance, so forth. And a teacher came into our room one day. I was about the second grade, about 1946. And the teacher said, "Children, that looks like Heil Hitler, so we're going to start," somebody, Fred Swartz or Bill Johnson or whatever his name was, in Congress said, "We're going to start putting our hand over our heart." That was in the 1940s when that happened. See, we just don't know. If you live through a generation, you'll forget. You won't know what's been happening. Let me see here. That's what he says here. This proved embarrassingly similar to the Nazi salute, and during World War II, this was dropped. And then he goes in, one cannot mention the flag, of course, without making reference to the story that it was Betsy Ross who stitched the first one. She did not. How's that? This whole story was made up by her grandson. We just believe what anybody says, don't we? If it sounds good. If anybody responsible for designing the flag, it was probably Frances Hopkinson, and nobody ever heard of her, right? Who was given credit by Congress to having done so. You see, you better check things out. When somebody tells you something, when a preacher tells you something, better find out if it's right or not. When you're a politician, don't believe him. And anchor men are always lying. They're leaning toward whatever their political beliefs are. You say, Jim, what are we going to do? Study, read, pay attention. That's why when we define words here at Grace and Truth Ministries, perhaps that'll get you keyed into defining what you hear men say on TV or what you read in the newspaper and books. I even tell you, don't read. You can't believe everything, even out of a good book, out of McClintock and Strong. I evaluate everything I'm reading out of these. And these are great encyclopedias, but once in a while I'll read something and say, I don't believe that. But I keep going. I'm not going to throw them away because I don't agree with one thing. If I'm reading Alfred Edersheim, who I believe is a great writer, I'm going to really evaluate him because he believes in Christmas. He believed in Christmas. He lived in the 1800s, and he had some beliefs I don't believe in. He believed in water baptism. I don't believe in that. It don't mean that he's not intelligent in a lot of his understanding. Oh, me. Let me see here. I'll just read a couple of things here that I'm just kind of thumbing through. Talking about the popularity of the Star-Spangled Banner, it's, boy, have we ever been lied to. The popularity of the Star-Spangled Banner, it can still be said to be popular, is due to much to the fabulous circumstances under which it was written. Francis Scott Key, which we're all familiar with, wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, actually was fortunate enough to watch the bombardment of Fort McHenry, and he actually waited through the night to see if the flag was still there. But did the flag he saw at dawn's early light fly through the night? As anyone can testify who has seen the flag, which is on the display at Smithsonian, it is huge, 30 feet by 42 feet. The stars alone are 2 feet across, point to point. For this flag to have survived the night the fort was under attack, a stormy, rainy, windy night, is almost inconceivable. Walter Lord, who wrote an acclaimed book on the War of 1812, is of the opinion that it probably did not fly all night. If there was a flag on the pole in the morning, as there undoubtedly was, it was probably hoisted up the pole that morning. The Americans hoisted a most superb and splendid ensign on their battery. This, says the Lord, most likely the flag Key saw. If there was a flag that flew all night, it would have been the fort's so-called storm flag, a small flag designed expressly for bad weather. But a flag as big as the one was couldn't blow in a wet wind out there. Then he says, how Key could have seen it is a mystery. He was 8 miles away on shore. Oh, say, can you see through the dawn's early light? Does it still wave and it's 40 feet long and it's wet and raining? That Francis Scott Key is associated in the American mind with the War of 1812, that's when it's flying at Fort McHenry, and thought of the connection with one of the great battles of the war is ironic because Key hated the war. He told his mother he thought the United States was to blame for this war, for this conflict, and deserved to lose it because we were attacking British shipping because they were taking shipping to our enemies. So we ended up in war with them. In letters home to friends and neighbors, Key, Francis Scott Key, condemned the abominable war as a lump of wickedness, and the United States was to blame for it. Now, is that funny? Have we been lied to? We're lied to on every hand. Why are we lied to? Men want to control people with their... let me say this. I don't blame Jefferson for being the heathen he was and writing and rewriting the Bible and throwing away everything from Acts through Revelation and throwing away Old Testament, getting a razor blade and cutting out all references to the resurrection, to miracles and the virgin birth because he didn't believe in it. Jefferson went to hell. I got a copy of Jefferson's Bible over here, and it says, and the end of the Bible says, and they rolled the stone up upon the door and walked away. And that was it. No resurrection. He didn't believe in it. Thomas Jefferson was an evil, wicked, godless man. Every generation knows that. Historians will say that to you if you go talk to them. I've got One Time magazine I've had years ago. I got it at home somewhere. And one of the articles said that in every generation, there's somebody going to try to take down Jefferson because they knew what he was. Even his own compatriots didn't believe in him. He was considered a slick businessman, very ambitious. He's the most popular president in the mind of the Americans that we had. And he was probably one of the biggest crooks. So was George Washington. George Washington was a surveyor. He was the richest man in America. He was playing games with people. He was extremely ambitious. And George Washington, being a surveyor, surveyed off 10,000 acres of American Indian land for himself. That's why he became the richest man in America. I'm just trying to share something about truth. Start thinking. If you're going to think about the Bible, don't just believe it because somebody says it. These are great books. If you pick them up, I mean, I've marked them all up. You can't hardly put them down when you start reading them. He'll tell you that these things that were said by these guys and about these guys are not true. He said Patrick Henry never said, give me liberty or give me death. He never said that. It was written by his publicist for a publication. Nathan Hale did not say, I regret that I have one life to give my country. He didn't say that. Standing on the deck of his ship, John Paul Jones did not say, I've yet begun to fight. That was publicized. He said some boring statement, we're still in the fight, or we're still here, or they have lied to us, right? But are the preachers lying? Yeah, I can give people information. I can get in this book on voodoo. Do you know that voodoo is the same thing as Christmas? This is an information book on voodoo. It's about nature worship, tree worship. Wait a minute. That's Christ's Mass, isn't it? They'll tell you that they didn't punch pins in dolls and try to kill people with them. It's the same nature worship as Christ's Mass. It's tree worship. It's fertility god worship. I wish I could give you all this information. Here's a book, Christmas in America. I've got another one at home called The Battle for Christmas. This is written by Professor Penny Reistad, professor at the University of Texas, about Christmas, called Christmas in America. They'll tell you all about Christmas. She'll tell you things that's outrageous. It's paganism. It goes back to paganism. Let me just read a little bit here. I'm just reading I can't read all these books. Why don't you read and educate yourself in truth? You got a computer, sit down and look up something. Last night I just got to, somebody stepped up here. I think his mic stepped up here. Well, I said, look at that. I got an article on Crazy Horse. I pulled off of the internet last night, and I looked to see what they're having to say. But it's going to be a different story than what his descendants said. I'm trying to tell you, America's insensitive to the whole truth. Don't believe everything you hear. Check it out. And you can. All you have to have is good sense. We've got the tools. You can come and write these ISBN numbers down. Listen to this. This is a Christmas in America by Penny Reistad. She's a very well-known writer about Christmas. Exactly when the Church of Rome began to keep Christmas. Notice that. Exactly how the Church of Rome began to keep Christmas, however, is not known. The first extant or well-known reference to the Feast of the Nativity may be as old as 336 AD. As old as 336 years after Christ. That's when they started. Some scholars believe that Emperor Constantine, who had converted to Christianity, now I don't believe that part. Don't believe he converted at all. We've gone through that. And built the Vatican atop the hill where Mithras cult worshipped the sun, and Mithras' birthday was December the 25th, the sun god. May have instituted the festival. In any case, by the middle of the 4th century, the church had boldly declared its nativity holy day to be the church, speaking of the Roman Catholic Church, not the Puritans, not the believers. The church had boldly declared its nativity holy day to be observed on the same day as the winter solstice. The concurrence of two celebrations gave the church an opportunity to turn elements of the Saturnalia itself to Christian ends. In other words, to turn this festival of Saturn, December the 17th through the 24th, into a Christian festival. It's the birthday of the unconquerable sun. On December the 21st is the longest nights of the year, and they gave the birthday of the unconquerable sun, since it was born again and again and again every year. They gave the birthday of the sun, December the 25th, long before Jesus was born. The creation of the sun, the center of the Saturnalia, to reinforce and symbolize the frequent scriptural and doctrinal imagery of God as the Son and Jesus as the role of the Son of God. The creation of Christmas was thus a measure of Christianity's growing power, challenging the crowds enjoying Saturnalian revelry to enjoy the once secretive Christians in celebration not of the birth of the S-U-N, but of the birth of Jesus, the Son of God. So they just brought it into the church and Christianized this pagan festival. And I can read on and on. I don't have time to. That's a great book. Christmas in America, Penny Restad. I love Paul Revere, whether he wrote or not, and he didn't. That's a good book. I don't know if you can even get that, Crazy Horse. Here's a great book. Look here. Somebody brought this to me one time. This is a children's encyclopedia. American Educator. It's just for children. You can see that in the front. It's got pictures for kids so they can kind of learn. It's a children's encyclopedia. You go to the C section, Christmas, right? And it'll tell you all about Christmas throughout the world. Christmas. The pagans celebrated the winter solstice. You go over here to an elementary school. Go to an elementary school, get one of them little bitty short chairs and sit down in it and reach up to the World Book or to this Christian Educator and pull out the C volume, and this is what you'll read. It's everywhere. It's like that old Ray Stevens song. He's everywhere, talking about Santa Claus. Remember that? The pagans celebrated the winter solstice, the beginning of the longer day. How many times do I need to read this? I mean, it's like Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum. Don't do that. Don't go after the pagan gods. Don't go after this sun and tree worship. Don't do it, Israel. Don't do it, Israel. People say, Jim Brown, why do you keep repeating yourself? For the same reason they did. America doesn't hear. They're deaf. They're insensitive. They're apathetic. Drove up across the street years ago. Carl Oldham was an attorney friend of mine, did a lot of closings right next to that big tall steeple, that heathen temple over there. Right by it, there's a building over there, and it's a office building. You know the building I'm talking about? Right next to it, right across the street from it. Carl owned that. I drove up, I saw him in the driveway. I said, Carl, listen to that. I hand him a cassette. I said, listen to that. He looked at the title and said, Christians are apathetic. And he looked at me and he said, Jim, I'm apathetic. It just broke my heart. I thought, oh, Carl. I'd go in and preach to him. He'd say, I never heard anybody talk about the Bible like you. And I'd explain no pre-trib rapture. We're going to be changed at the last trump. And all of this. He'd say, well, that's really good, Jim. I'm going back to the Baptist church next Sunday. And he died last year from an infection he got in his leg. And you know what? He was a historian. He knew all about history, went somewhere every year, and he could tell you the truth. I walked into his office one day and I said, Carl, democracy and capitalism is wicked and evil. He said, well, sure it is. That's what my business is about, suing people. And he knew the truth. Wouldn't deal with it. The truth is out there, folks. All you got to do is think and read. We got the laziest bunch of people in America. Most people here will, I don't mean to insult you. Please don't take it as an insult. I know a lot of people don't have time. I'll say, what you need to do is get Mr. Edersheim's books and read them. And everybody will buy Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah. And I'll say, have you read on that any? Well, when did you buy it? Well, a year ago. Have you read any of it? Well, no. Hey, what are we going to do? I'll educate you as much as I can. I read all the time. I never quit reading. People buy computers, and you know what they do with them? Play games on them. That's it. 24 hours a day, games. Do you know that learning information is a game? If you learn more than anybody else knows about a given subject, you're going to win in any conversation you get in with people. It's a long-range game. You can be there, sitting out there in the public somewhere, and somebody will say, well, you know, the Bible says this, and you can say, it doesn't say that. And you're going to win because you're going to have more answers than they've got questions. Learn. Kids, learn. If you learn more about real estate than anybody else knows, you'll be more successful. If you learn more about the law, you'll be more successful. If you learn more about the Bible, nobody can trick you and fool you. And you won't be apathetic either. People don't care. Their life is smooth. Listen to this. Christian customs. This is out of American Educator. The mistletoe plant is mentioned in Norse mythology, in the story of Balder. I've read all about that in a lot of those Celtic books, those Saxon, Anglo-Saxon books, the Vikings books. The custom of hanging the mistletoe from the ceiling comes from the belief of the Druids, fire worshippers, and tree worshippers, that to bring good luck to the house, the plant must never touch the ground. The custom of kissing under the mistletoe can also be traced to the Druids, who believed that the kiss under the mistletoe meant a sincere pledge of love and promise of marriage. This has to do with Balder and the Druids. Balder was the father of the gods among the Druids. In fact, if you get the books, The Golden Bough, if you've seen the book The Golden Bough, I've got that. I've got the single, and I've got the 13 volumes. The Golden Bough was the mistletoe. Some of them say it's where the ground kissed the sky. Had to do with the sky gods and the gods of fertility. You want to learn something? Look here. I've told you about they stood around the wassailing bowl. That was where they toasted and said, to your health. They wore these wreaths around their head, which was the form of the swastika, with candles on top of them. And they would stand around singing the old Yuletide song, Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly, which has nothing to do with Jesus. It comes out of the Scandinavian world. Good night. And I can't even get into all of this. All I'm doing is flipping through some of it, just sharing a little bit of it with you. Santa, listen to this. In Switzerland, Santa rewards good children with gifts, while his black-clad demon carries a switch for bad children. He had a demon with him. St. Nicholas was a Roman Catholic bishop, the Bishop of Myra of the 4th century. It's all Roman Catholicism. I can't read all of this. Here's a great book. Pick this up somewhere. Jesus lived how long ago? 2,000 years ago, right? The name of this is 4,000 Years of Christmas. Now, I read to you out of that book that I got from Sydney last week. It was a Christmas songbook, and in the front of it, it had the story of Christmas, and this is the same story that he had in that book. Same story, except it's in the form of a book. This guy, in the introduction, he's saying, I had no idea how varied, rich, and ancient our heritage of Christmas was until I read this gem of a book. Nor did I imagine that the familiar practices performed in the small frame house where I grew up in the 1940s also had its origins in Babylonish festivals and Roman revels. Revelings is wild parties. The survival of customs from such diverse times and cultures throughout history seemed to me to a powerful testament to the universality of human experience. It suggests that we are not only brothers and sisters under the skin, but also in time and space. Well, he don't understand that, does he? 2,000 years before Christ in the land where the Tigris and the Euphrates meet. We already went through that. That's called Sumar. Not Samaria, Sumar. If this is the Mediterranean Sea, here is Egypt. There's the Nile River here and the Delta here. Here's the Sinai. Sinai. Here's Israel. And here is what we call Lebanon, or ancient Tyre and Sidon. You get over down here in the Mesopotamian Valley. Mesopotamia means, it's an old ancient term, means between the rivers. It's talking about the Tigris and the Euphrates. They meet together here just above the Persian Gulf. And on the Euphrates is Babylon. And on the Tigris River, up there about, up there where Baghdad is, somewhere in that area, was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire, which was northern Babylon, or Nineveh. And the reason Jonah went to Nineveh was to declare judgment against them, because that was the Assyrian barbarians that had slaughtered people throughout the world, and particularly Israel. Now, Sumar, S-U-M-E-R, that is the lower Mesopotamian Valley, what we call Iraq, or they call Babylon. And this is the proximate area where Babel was built in Genesis 11, and the proximate area where the garden eastward in Eden was. We've gone through that. Now, he says, 2,000 years before Christ, in the land where the Tigris in the Euphrates and the Tigris meet, people felt the weight of the old year as it drew to a close at the winter solstice, and needed a sense of renewal to face the new one, just as we do today. 4,000 years of Christmas. The rules of ordinary living were relaxed. The men surreptitiously gathered in the kitchen where my father would draw a pint of bourbon from its hiding place in the broom closet and pass it around to each one for a nip. This sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? In sigh of satisfied warmth, that must have been our mild Hoosier version of the Roman Saturnalia. We got a version of their Saturnalia up here in Indiana. The pagan revels of excess that marked that time of the year. Like these, Romans also decorated with green boughs to remind us of life's continuance, so forth. Richness of the story of the 4,000 years of Christmas gives new meaning and pleasure to the holiday. I wish I could read it all. The prologue. Although Christmas story centers in the Christ child of Bethlehem, it begins long before his coming, that we find its hero arriving on the scene after more than half the time of the story has gone by. Christmas is one of humankind's great experiences. For more than 4,000 years, spreading over the earth, it has drawn the loyalties and longings of millions of people, growing always richer as mankind has matured. To what then shall we liken Christmas? It is like a seed that is planted within the soil. It springs upward and downward, and that's exactly what it is. But he's saying it with commendation, and it is a condemnation. I can't read this. Gosh, I wish I could read it all to you. I've got it marked, got parts marked, but I can't even read all the parts I marked. I don't have time. I got to get back to the Bible. The Christian stream will have overtaken others. In the Northland, the full-blown Christmas festival, the Northland is talking about the Scandinavian world, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, where the winters got so cold that they considered these trees, these evergreens, living through 40 below zero. They said these are magical trees, and we will hang this holly and greenery around our pagan temples and houses and sing the wassailing bowl song, Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly. That was long before Jesus. Goodness. He goes into the rising of the sun in the Tigris and the Euphrates. There's nothing Christian about this. Let me just read a little bit of this and then I'll get on back to the Bible. I'm trying to implore you to study and read the Word. Read the Bible. Define the words. Find out what things mean. Don't believe everything you hear. You think I believe a politician when he says, I'm going to give you everything you want. Well, who's going to pay for it? Well, the government will. Who's the government? You are. Huh? Don't give me a bridge and then tell me I got to pay for it. That's like your wife saying, honey, what do you want for Christmas? I don't want anything. I got to pay for it. Why do you... Is that ridiculous? You spend $1,500 on Christmas. You get back $300 of stuff that you don't even like and don't even want, ties and shirts that you won't wear on a bet. That's a terrible investment, isn't it? Let me just read this. What the land of Eden and its waters were to all the earth, and this is Eden, all this is Eden. Arabia, Sinai, Israel, all the way to the Mesopotamian valley was Eden. Eastward in Eden was the Garden of Eden. The land of the Tigris and Euphrates, that is where Babylon began. That's where the Eden was. That's where the Christmas system started. It's the old fire and tree worship long before Jesus. Mesopotamia is the very ancient mother of civilization. Christmas began there over 4,000 years ago. Notice he says Christmas. He didn't even call it Yule. He didn't even call it Saturnalia. He says Christmas began there over 4,000 years ago as the festival that renewed the world for another year. The 12 days of Christmas, the bright fires, and probably the Yule log, the giving of the presents, the carnivals with their floats, their merrymaking and clowning, the mummers who sang and played from house to house and said, if you don't give us something at Christmas time, we'll do something damaging to your house. That was the same thing as trick or treat. The Celtic form of the Saturnalia called Samhain or All Hallows Eve or Halloween. All these and more began centuries before Christ was born. This is historical fact. People say, oh, I just don't believe that. Well, you believe George Washington was the father of our country? I believe it. You can't just come up with something that's factual and say, well, I don't like that because it don't go along with America. I know that. That which is highly esteemed among men is an abomination to God. It stinks to God if the world likes it. Does the world like Christmas? Everybody likes it. The prostitute likes it. The gangster likes it. The drug dealers like it, don't they? Didn't you like it when you was dealing drugs? They all like Christmas. Let me just read a couple more things here. To the Mesopotamians, notice he can't get away from Mesopotamia, the lower Iraq, Babylonian valley. Can't get away from it. To the Mesopotamians, New Year's was a time of crisis. Once, in a very distant time, their chief god Marduk, remember we read about him last week from another article, had routed the monsters of chaos and had built out of a world without form and void, an orderly world, and had created mankind, but the order remained an uneasy one. It ran down, so to speak, during the year towards its close after the crops had been harvested. They'd come to the end of the harvest, September, October. And they said that these evil gods took the sap down, caused the crops to die, and they needed crops in the spring. So they had all these names for these evil gods. You had Pluto was one of the gods of the underworld. Hades was one of the gods of the underworld. They had the evil gods and the good gods. They said the evil gods was taking the crops down, killing them for the winter, so they went after all these gods to bring the sun back in the spring, and it's the same old story. That's what they're saying here. Toward its close, after the crops had been harvested, the empty brown of the fields told that life was dying for the winter. You know how long I can talk about that? All day. I'm just trying to introduce you to some things. Then Marduk again had to do battle with the monsters of chaos. The monsters of chaos were supposed to be the evil gods taking the crops down and wanting to get them back at spring. In another society, they said Ishtar resurrected Tammuz, who was a dead god. He was one of the gods that represented the crops down here in the ground. And Ishtar was the mother of Ishtar or Ashtar or Easter was the mother of Tammuz, one of the sun gods. Resurrecting in the spring has to do with having crops in the spring. And God said, I'm the fertility God. I'll fill up your basket in your store when you worship me and don't go after these other gods. They're imitations. Then Marduk had to do battle with the monsters of chaos who were down here under the ground so that death might not become complete. So they'll have a resurrection of the crops in the spring. It was about food. It was about economy. Guess what our problems are in the world? Economy. Famine. Thus he renewed the world every year. It was a grim battle fought in the regions below because there was no crops. Y'all realize how simple that is? It's like falling off a log. If you listen to, I'll just read this other paragraph here. As the Mesopotamians saw it in the struggle of the new year, the whole idea of the giving of the gifts was the sun's coming back. Let's give each other gifts in celebration. Those weren't birthday gifts given to Jesus, and they weren't 3 wise men. We don't know how many wise men there were. They were gifts to a king. Gold represented purity all through the Bible. The trying of your faith is more precious than gold that perisheth, though it be tried by fire. Myrrh was what they anointed dead bodies with. He was going to be the he's going to be the dead, resurrected Savior. Frankincense was put upon all the sacrifices. These were not birthday gifts. The Mesopotamians saw to it the struggle of the new year. People faced a threefold problem to purify themselves of the evils that their sins of the past year had brought upon them, to renew the strength that the year had drained away during this time period here when the crops were gone. It was all about spring. And if possible, to find a substitute who could take the consequences of sins that they had committed. Sounds like a Savior, doesn't it? I don't have time to read all that. I just thought I'd introduce you to some books. I've got so much on all this. Here's Fox's Book of Martyrs. I've read from that. Here's a book on the myth of Mary. He'll telling you in this, the myth of Mary, it's not just about Mary, but it'll tell you why Christmas got into the church. It'll tell you how Constantine was afraid he was losing the empire. I put it on the board before, I'll put it on the board again. The way Christmas got into the church. Here's how it got in. The pagan emperors, they were sun worshipers. The Caesars were called the sons of the sun god. They even called themselves gods. Throughout history, you'll find it in an old Saturday afternoon movie, watching some old cheap Roman movie. They'll say, the Caesar will come out, a bad actor will come out saying, I am the child of the sun, in a bad brogue, bad actor. They'll even put that in there. Now, if this is Turkey up here, here's Africa down here. Africa. And here's the Mediterranean Sea. Mediterranean Sea. Or the Great Sea, what they called it. Great Sea. Then you have the Aegean Sea up here. Here's Greece, and then over here to Italy. And then over to down here where Spain touches the tip of Africa. It's a bad drawing. You got England over here. England. And here's Spain. France is in here. France, or the Franks. Franks. And the Franks form of the Christ Mass was Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday. And then you had Germany up here. Now the Romans, here's Rome up here in the middle of Italy. The Romans were ruling most of the civilized world. They had gone down here and conquered Carthage. Carthage was where Hannibal come from. Hannibal brought his elephants over the Alps to come over here, and they're going to conquer Rome, but they didn't do it. Now, you had the Germanic tribes, and these were very barbaric people. You had the Gauls. Some of them had settled over here in France. Some of the Gauls settled in this area right here. Gauls, we get the word Galatia from that. Then you had the Celts. You had the Huns. The Huns come from the Far East, settled in the Germanic area. That's why we call the Germans Huns. Whenever I'm a German, you can call me Hun if you want to. Mike's definitely a Hun. Sounds like talking to his parents over in his grandfather or uncle over there in Germany, and he's used to live downstairs. I don't know how does the German sound, whatever it is. And it sounds like we got a Nazi in the house downstairs talking, trying to plot the overthrow of grace and truth. But anyway, here's the Aegean Sea. And the Celts and the Huns and the Visigoths particularly, very dangerous, wild, barbaric people. You had the Goths, their first cousins, and the Ostrogoths. And you had just dozens of these. The Gauls and the Celts and they had dozens of these hordes rampaging across Europe while Rome was ruling Europe, ruling all this area here. Here's Israel down here, Israel. Here's Babylon, or what we call Iraq, Babylon. And over here's Persia, which we call Iran. And of course, Israel is right here. And because of Israel going after these idol gods for 500 years, they went after Baal in the grove. They were carried over into captivity over here in Babylon. Northern Israel was carried away to northern Babylon, which was Assyria, in 722 BC. Southern Israel was carried to Babylon in 586 BC. And you're going to find Assyria carrying northern Israel away in 2 Kings 17 through 19. And then you're going to find Babylon carried away carrying southern Judah away into Babylon in 2 Kings, the 25th chapter, and in 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter. Now, the way Christmas got into the church, here's how it happened. Rome was ruling the civilized world, but an empire, when you think of something imperial or empirical, that means a world ruling system, but they never ruled completely. They would rule while there'd be a bubbling, Rome would be ruling, or when Babylon was ruling, there was a bubbling up of an empire trying to raise up in the form of Persia till they got big enough to attack Babylon and conquer Babylon. Then while they were trying to rule the world, for about 500 years, there was an empire trying to rise up over here in the form of Greece. Finally, under Alex the Great, they rose up and conquered Persia, went over all the world and conquered all of their states. And then after this, Rome comes in and subjugates the four generals of the Grecian Empire. When Alexander the Great dies over here in Babylon, four generals, Cassander, Lysachemus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, take over his kingdoms. And then Rome subjugates these guys. And while Rome is ruling, you've got all these wild, crazy, I call them terrorists. They were Celts and they were Huns and the Vandals. They were all sun and tree worshiping people. Well, all the Caesars, for about 200 years prior to Constantine, back to the first century, about 100 AD, all the Caesars felt like they were going to lose the empire to these rampaging, crazy people. So Constantine said, we have to do something. about the time that, this is the Aegean Sea, about the time that you have above the Aegean Sea, you've got the Black Sea here, you got the Danube River running down here. Roman territory is south of the Danube River. When the Huns, now you have to understand, these tribes are all fighting each other all the time. When the Huns drove the Visigoths down below the Danube River, they said, and you'll find this in this book. You can get it off the internet. I've got copies of it off the internet. You can just go to, here's something on the Puritans, here's on the Waldenses. I've got things on Constantine. You can go on the internet, look up Galerius, look up Constantine, and you'll get all the information off the internet. Look up barbarians. So when the Visigoths were driven across the Danube, drove them into Roman territory, Rome began to exact all these taxes on them, and the Visigoths were some of the most barbaric people that ever lived in the ancient world. They lived on horses like some of the more barbaric American Indian tribes, like the Comanches, and who were very merciless in their attacks. The Visigoths were somewhat like this. They could fire a bow and arrow from a horse, they say, and they could hit their target 50 yards away. Just these guys, they lived on horses. They were a nomadic people. They may plant for a while, and then they'd take off and say, let's go, let's rip and tear the world down. Constantine thought, I'm going to have problems with these people. When he started putting taxes on the Visigoths, they said, we're not taking this, and they started attacking this direction. Constantine says, I've got to do something to save the empire. The best way to get to people is through their religions. He said, I will amalgamate these sun and tree gods. I'll amalgamate this with what he called Christianity, with the Roman church that was polluted and corrupted. So he amalgamated Christianity and the fire and tree worship of these pagan people and say, now you can come into the church with your pagan gods, with your sun and tree gods. We'll bring all of this in. We'll take the pagan worship of Mithra at Rome, and we'll take his favorite time of the year, his birthday, December the 25th. We'll put that into the church. We'll put that in with your sun and tree gods. We'll amalgamate. That means to blend together. An amalgamation union is people who make clothes, and they amalgamate cloths and threads. That will amalgamate this and make it all one cloth. And we'll bring that into the church, and we'll rename this feast of Saturn, December the 17th through the 24th, where we had the feast of Saturn, or the Saturnalia. And we will call this Christ Mass. And that's what they did. And they started bringing it into the church, and a little at a time, over the next 1,200 years, they started bringing in 325 AD, this is when Constantine brought this about, 325 AD, and I got a paper here that'll tell you how they brought in the rosary. The rosary came out of Hinduism. The confessional came out of Hinduism. They brought in all this paganism into the church, renamed it the Christ Mass, and America doesn't care. They don't care that this is facts. You can get the Barbarian series, and you can see this take place in the Barbarian series. They won't tell you it was to put down Christmas. That's what it was about. That it was to insert Christmas into the church. That's where it comes from, right here. That's history. That's not something I made up. You can read that out of this myth of Mary. They'll go into it in great detail. Not only that, you can go online and look up the barbarians. We got sources. Every tool you can imagine, we have it. If people are not too lazy to study, read. I believe America is just, they got computers that they play games with. We got phenomenal amount of information on computers. And people don't use them for that. They use them to play games all night long. If you're guilty, I'm not sorry for saying it. This thing of learning is a game. It's a way to beat people, and it's a way to keep people from fooling you. Learn. Young people, learn. Learn everything you can. I didn't know I wanted chemistry so much till I got older and got to studying the Bible as much as I did. I didn't know I wanted physics as much. I'd like to go back and study nuclear physics. I'd like to go study quantum mechanics or quantum physics. I want to know all I can know because I want to know what these guys are trying to fool us with. I don't care how smart a man is. He can get on the top of the world, and he will lean towards his own convictions to move the world the way he wants to go. I don't care if he's got an IQ of 180. He still has a sinful nature that wants to control people. And you can learn if you want to. Now, goodness, I just thought I'd introduce you some things. This is not just about the Bible. It's about everything we're being taught in America. I don't believe hardly anything I hear or see. I have to go and look into it myself. Somebody tells me something, if it doesn't hold water and it rings a bad bell in my mind, it's like throwing a monkey wrench in the middle of machinery. It goes clank, clank. I'm saying that don't fit. Now, we started off saying, America is apathetic. They don't care that Christmas is pagan. We're going to do it anyway. We don't do it that way. They don't care that Christ's Mass is the Mass of Christ. The Mass, I've said, is the focal point of all Roman Catholicism. The Mass is when you go to a Roman Catholic Mass, and Gerald knows this, and Gary knows this, and Gwen knows this. They've all been Catholics. And Jean knows this. The focal point of Roman Catholicism is the Mass, isn't it? That's it. Everything else is secondary. The confessional is secondary. The beads are secondary. Everything. Saying our Fathers and our Hail Marys are secondary. The main thing is you got to attend the Mass, and you can't partake of the Mass unless you're a Roman Catholic. You have to be initiated. You have to go through your First Communion. You have to go through all of this. And to partake of the Mass, you have to be baptized Roman Catholic. Otherwise, you have to go to hell one day according to their catechism. Isn't that right? You have to go to hell without being a Roman Catholic. Nobody's going to heaven except Roman Catholics. You have to be a faithful Roman Catholic. And they hold that little Eucharist up. This is the Mass right here. This is what it is. And this is everything that Christ's Mass is about. The reason the Albigenses, the Waldenses, the Huguenots were killed. These were Christians in the ancient world that were persecuted. They came to America and called themselves Puritans. The reasons they were killed, in the Fox's Book of Martyrs, you can read in here how they were tortured every imaginable way you can think. They called them heretics. But this is, I was telling the folks the other night about a movie about 1958. It was called The Conqueror Worm. It was a movie, Edgar Allan Poe's, one of his old stories. And The Conqueror Worm was about a witch-finding general. It came out about 1958 or 59. Vincent Price was in it. He was going around the country killing heretics. It doesn't say it in the movie, but you know it's Roman Catholicism killing the believers. It's what it was about. And they killed these people because they say it in here, they would not partake of the sacrament of the Mass, the Christ's Mass. That's why 60 million Christians and Jews were slaughtered during the Inquisition. It doesn't take a lot. It was called the Spanish Inquisition. And I went online and I didn't go online, I went into McClintock and Strong. You go on McClintock and Strong. If you got McClintock and Strong, look up Inquisition. Look up Puritans. Study. Don't just believe me. You look up Inquisition, it'll tell you all about it. The name given to a tribunal of Roman Catholic Church whose function is to seek out and punish heretics and believers. And they slaughtered them. Reading this book is one of the saddest things to read, the way these people died. Because they wouldn't partake of the sacrament of the Mass. They said it was heathenism. Kids, young people, women had their breasts cut off. They would be tortured, be disjointed, put on the rack. Then they'd take them off. When they took them off the rack, they'd pull their bones out of joint. Then they'd take them off the rack and put their bones back in joint, bring them out the next day and do it all over again. They would pull their fingernails out and pinch them all over with all hot irons and pull their eyelids, punch their eyes out, put these cords around their head, put a wire twister on it and twist it until their eyes popped out, until their brains gushed out. For being Christians. And people say God wouldn't cause his church to go through trials. He always has. What do you mean that it's got to be a pre-trib rapture because God wouldn't let his church get beat up? What idiocy. They raise that Eucharist up, and if you don't partake in that, you think the Roman Catholic Church really loves the heretics today? You're wrong. They control the South American countries. They slaughter people. They kill people wherever they're in. When they're ruling, one of the writers said, when they're a lamb in ascendancy, and they are a devouring lion when they have ascended to the top. When they get in control, they raise the Eucharist up, turn it into the literal body of Christ, and you've got to come down and accept that Eucharist or accept Christ, and that's where it comes from. Now, these are some books you can come up and look at after church if you want to. I've got tons of books in my libraries. All I can do is bring up a sack of them at a time. Make it quick. I'll lose my place. Those two pillars and that ceiling comes out of the pantheon of the gods in Greece. When you see that midnight mass on the midnight Christmas Eve, that came out of the pantheon of the gods. The pantheon of the gods, pan means all. It was the temple of the gods in Greece, of the pagan gods in Greece. We are living, look, I've got so many books. Once in a while I just bring them so you can look at some of them. I've got books coming out my ears. I could bring hundreds of books up here from my library. I can't read them all. I can read to you about a little bit about each of them, tell you some things about them. The problem with America is they're apathetic. They don't care. And what's really sad is a lot of people at Grace and Truth don't care. You got to do more than just come and listen to me. You got to go home and read your Bibles. You don't have to. I know some of the ladies are very busy, and I know they can't. I want us to... People, they don't care that Christmas is cannibalism. Mr. Hislop in Two Babylons says that cannibal comes from the word kahan Baal. Baal is what we call Baal, the fire god. Kahan is the Hebrew word priest. You'll see that word Kahan in an English form, and it's C-O-H-E-N. That's a Jewish name. There was a gangster in the 40s named Mickey Cohen. He was a bodyguard for Bugsy Siegel. He was a Jew. And Siegel is Jewish too. I guess that's why he had a Jewish bodyguard. And Mickey Cohen was supposed to be a priest of God, but of course he wasn't. He was going around offering sacrifices with a machine gun is what he's doing. But Kahan Baal, Mr. Hislop says, was shortened to Cannibal, and then cannibal, which is a devourer of human flesh. And the priests of Baal offered human sacrifices on their altars and ate the human sacrifices from their altars. We think of eating of Christ as eating of a god. Here's an article out of... It's in the E volume of Hastings. Hastings is a wonderful set of encyclopedias. Great set. I love them. I got a set at home, a set up here. I got a set of McClellan and Strong up here. I got a set at home. I refer to them all the time, here and at home. Sit down and just read them. Here's an article out of Hastings. You can look up in the index volume, you can look up under Eating the God. They'll go back in the ancient world and tell you all about this. Eating the God. When they ate of Jesus, they said they were eating the God. Last week we said, when Jesus said, except you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you, he tells us what that means. That was an idiom. It was an ancient idiom. To eat flesh and drink blood meant to partake in a slaughter. And he says, for my flesh is meat indeed. When you eat flesh, you eat indeed. Indeed is the word alethes, A-L-E-T-H-E-S. It means of truth. And he said, my blood is drink indeed. So when you eat flesh and drink blood, you eat and drink of truth, A-L-E-T-H-E-S, alethes or aletheia, A-L-E-T-H-E-I-A, which is the word truth. When you take the word truth and break it down to its components, it comes from the word lanthano, which means to hide, lie hid, or conceal. When you place the alpha in front of lanthano as a negative particle, negating the word, it translates truth, aletheia. It means not to hide anything, not to conceal anything. When you eat and drink of truth, you don't conceal the meaning of anything. You tell the truth like what I'm doing up here in the pulpit. You tell on everybody. You tell on the politicians. You tell on the lawyers. You tell on the prejudice of all kinds. You tell on everything. Tell the truth and suffer for it. That's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? You won't do it till you get older. I know you're not going to do it tomorrow, especially young people. I know that. But the time will come where you need to learn to do that. But you know what's going to make you learn that? Learning this book called the Bible. It makes you brave. When you have 1,000 answers for every question that somebody asks you, you're not nervous anymore. I go out in public, somebody says something, I say, that's not true. You want to know the truth? I'll tell you. I leave it at that. Don't force it down nobody's throat. You'll be able to stand. You won't be deceived and fooled. Doesn't that get old? Aren't you embarrassed when you get down the road and somebody's fooled you and you say, I went along with them, they strung me along, they were con artists? Listen to this about eating the God. This is out of Hastings. I really believe in my books. I don't have my books in my house to be decorative. When you look in my library and pull books out, I've got 50, 60, 75 Post-it notes in all my books. I can walk up and pull them out. I'll say, that's in this book. Look at this. I don't make this stuff up. People think, he makes that up. Boy, sure I'm good if I can make up this much stuff. It doesn't take a brilliant man to do it or a brilliant woman. It just takes reading. And don't look for a place to read for 2 hours. I keep saying this. Read 10, 15 minutes at a time. If you get an idea, open up one of your commentaries, we teach people here to build your own library. I don't loan my library out. I'll say, look, if you can't afford the books, I'll get them for you. I don't loan out Mad or Shine books, but I'll buy you a set if you don't have the money for them.
They just came out with Hastings. Our collection.
Oh, well, that's good. Hastings on computer for $30. Hastings is fantastic. Here's an article out of Hastings, Eating the God. The idea that the properties of an organism are required by eating its substance is widely spread among semi-civilized peoples. It forms a prevalent explanation of ceremonial cannibalism and is probably the chief among the reasons given for the correlated rite of theophagy. Theophagy means eating the God. Theos and phagos. Remember the restaurant down here called Phagos that they had at Rivergate? That means to eat. Theos. Theophagy is eating the God. And they ate their gods. Well, I've talked to missionaries from down South America. I've read about them, and they'll tell you that those people will kill their enemies and eat their hearts and eat their brains because they want their strength. That's why they do it. That's the reason for Kahan Baal. And the priests of Baal ate from their altars, and God's priests ate from their altars, and they'd reach down and pull out beef, lamb. They had a flesh hook in front of the temple. I'll erase this. And they would offer the sacrifices in front of the temple on this altar right there. There's the veil. Here's the Ark of the Covenant. Table of showbread. Altar of incense, 7 candlesticks, brazen sea. And they'd offer the sacrifices every day, and that's where the priests who were on duty ate from. They ate from their altars. The priests of Baal tried to imitate them, and by the way, the priests of Baal wore tall white pointed hats, white sheets, and worshipped a flaming cross on what they call Lady Day in the ancient world. Sounds like the Klan to me, doesn't it, you? Well, it was. Same thing. Roman Catholics. Roman Catholics and the Klan and the Muslims all come out from out of the same system. That's what's funny. They all hate each other. He'll become sanctified as his God is if he eats the God. So they'd call their gods down into their sacrifices. You know how frustrating this is to me, and I've got 10,000 things I want to say to you up here, and I can just pick here and there. So here's some crumbs. I get real frustrated. Up here, I've got a million things in my head that I want to say. I hit one of these subjects, and I want to go off on a tear for about 6 or 8 hours. I've spent that much time studying. And whenever you get a little bit of the puzzle put together, the rest of the puzzle starts falling into place after so many years. And those of you that have been coming here can see that just a mention of these names. If you listen all the time to these messages, watch the DVDs, you're not going to get behind in the thought processes. Communion in the flesh and blood of a God is necessarily indirect, even when I read that. The sacrificial form of cannibalism obviously springs from the idea that a victim offered to a supernatural being participates in his sanctity from the wish of the worshiper to transfer himself something of its benign virtue. The virtue of the God is going to come into you if you eat him. That's what they said. That comes out of paganism. The Mass is pagan. Let me just read a little bit up here. Where the God is a deity of the corn, he may be eaten. Boy, so much comes to my mind. They had the gods of the corn. They had the corn wafer. They had the... Gosh, I'm running out of time. I hadn't even got started. The light went on back there. I hope y'all will forgive me not being able to... I don't feel like I've even got any part of this message out this morning. I meant to get back to the Bible. I just want you to learn to study. Quit being fooled. We don't have to be fooled. My heart is broken because the nation doesn't listen to anything. I have a broken heart every day. And all I'm trying to do is tell people the truth, and they're getting mad and fighting me and arguing and fussing and cussing. And he may be eaten in the anthropomorphic substance or in the form of grain or bread, and that's the Roman Catholics have deified the cracker. They carry it around on a platform and they bow to it. It's a god. That's why they say Jesus is present in the Eucharist when you come down and accept it. You have to be crazy to believe that, or a Catholic one. The Mexican theophany is an important example of the rite through the cult, though the cult is apparently composite. And it goes on, and I can't read all that. I'm running out of time. Look at these books. Take the titles down. I'll give you a list of 100 more. Whew. America doesn't care. God says, don't add to my word. My word is pure there in Proverbs 30. If you add to it, you'll be found to be a liar. They've taken all of this paganism and brought it in the church and called it Christ's Mass. Isaiah 45:19 says, the things that I declare are right. Psalms 12:6-8, the words of the Lord are pure words. Don't change his words. Psalms 18:30, as for God, his words are perfect. Psalms 19:8, the statutes to the Lord are right. Don't add anything. Don't add Christ's Mass. Study and find out if what you're hearing is true. Psalms 119:140-142, the word is pure. And God's servant loves a pure word. The law is holy and the commandment holy and just. Romans 7:12 and Romans 7:14. We know that the law is spiritual. I am carnal, Paul says. America is apathetic. You know what makes them apathetic? I just got to give you this. Ephesians, the 4th chapter. Ephesians 4. I'll give you this. And I'm running out of time. I've just skimmed the surface this morning on America being apathetic. I may come back next week and go into some detailed biblical reasons America is apathetic. But Ephesians 4th chapter will tell you why America is apathetic. They're listening to winds of doctrines. It makes you wander around just like some vagrant going from place to place, a transient. It makes people wander from church to church and place to place and from doctrine to doctrine. He says that here in Ephesians, the 4th chapter, that we henceforth, verse 14, we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men. The word sleight is the word cubia. It's our word cube. It means dice. It has the idea of slipping loaded dice in your hand. A fixed deal. That's what the deceivers are. Cubia. And cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. The word deceive is the word plane. It means to be an impostor. But speaking the truth in love. Love is agape, walking in God's commandments. Tell the truth while you're walking in them. May grow up unto him in all things which is the head, even Christ. I'm going to come back to this next week. This is one of my favorite chapters on the apostasy and the apathy of the church. From whom the whole body, the church, fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in the message of every part, making increase of the body. The body has to increase. Unto the edifying of itself in love. This I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you henceforth walk not after as other Gentiles walked, in the vanity of your mind, transientness, just going from place to place, looking for winds of doctrines, having your understanding darkened. What if I said having your faith darkened? Faith is substance, hypostasis, understanding. Being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them. The reason America's alienated, they're ignorant. You're uninformed and uneducated. Educate yourself. Young people, educate yourself. Learn. I am a believer in learning. I feel like I've wasted a day if I don't go into my library and learn something. I have to learn. I don't care if it's some secular thing out here in the world. I want to learn something. Last night I sat in there, picked up a book, and I started reading on electrolysis. I thought, this is interesting. Just learn something. The ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart. God is not talking to unbelievers. He's talking to believers whose hearts are blinded. They're parao. They are hardened. And here's what does it. Being past feeling. Past feeling is the word apalgeo. When you go after all these winds of doctrine, it blinds you. You get in a transient search. And apalgeo happens to you. A-P-A-L-G-E-O. That's the word past feeling. It means apathetic. Winds of doctrine is what has made the church apathetic. It's listening to all these wacko preachers. Kenneth Copeland, Billy Graham, and people who do not know the Word of God. Don't believe everything you hear. I'm going to come back to the apathy of America. They don't care what anything means. They don't care what predestination means. They don't care about the definition. Well, I know what I think. I don't care what you think. They don't know what prayer means. They don't know what saved means. They don't know what anything means. They just got a feeling about their God up at the big Baptist church or the big Church of Christ. They're insensitive to the truth. I believe America is dead overall. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for truth. God, help us to understand we need to learn your word. Let us not be fooled in the world. Lord, I pray you'll move in the hearts of the people. We're in a time where the world has never been this dark. Especially here in America, Lord, under the guise of Christianity. Lead us to your elect. We pray that you'll strengthen us, Lord. Fight our battles for us. Lord, I am so tired of a world that claims to believe you and they don't. I pray you'll move upon the church here, move upon the people to learn so they can't be deceived and led astray by every wind of doctrine that's out there and get in a state of apathy just saying, I'm okay. Open up many doors for the ministry. Fight our battles. We'll praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Maybe that's a challenge to you, I hope. Eating the God. Ah.
All the Indians and all that stuff, when they would do a kill, they would always eat the heart.
Yeah, they'd eat the heart.
It's just the
They ate
same
the heart of the
thing.
buffalo, first thing.
That's right, same thing.
They did that in the Dances with Wolves. Pulled the heart out and said, "Here, you eat it." Huh? Yeah, they did. Yep.
Whatever it was.
Well, that was eating the god, and they considered the buffalo one of their gods
Yep.
because it fed them. It's just amazing how a lot of this is obvious. It's right in front of our faces. But people won't read. People here won't read. Oh, yeah. Hold that for me. I'll turn this off. Hey, Brother Dan.
I'm gonna write down names of some more.